Hello and welcome to episode 93 of Glitch Report. Thank you so much for joining me on the program today. My name is GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram Threads. You know it, you love it. I am there all over the place. Just recently dropped 2 new videos on TikTok. Make sure to check those out. One of them being related to a news article that we're going to talk about today. You know, when I was preparing the news for this week, maybe this is me, call me naive, call me whatever you want. I'm okay with it. But at the time I couldn't help but think that, like, oh man, this is this one news story is going to be the craziest news story of the week. And I'll just spoil it. That news story is that PlayStation is doing a quick U-turn on Helldivers 2, scrapping mandatory PSN linking. We're going to talk about that a little bit more on the show. And then Nintendo started talking about, you know, when in the somewhat near future, the distant near future, I guess I would say, when Nintendo's going to be talking about the next Nintendo console, a follow-up, a successor to the Switch, kind of, you know, alluding to that stuff as well. And I thought, oh, wow, like we went from the U-turn of Helldivers to now a new Switch, you know, console, or sorry, a Nintendo console on the horizon. You know, that's all really crazy. And then, not to be outdone by Sony or by Nintendo, Xbox has come through with some really big news that we're going to kick things off with. I just want to state, like, just for the record, that while it's exciting to have stuff to talk about, news stories to cover on this very show, the honest fact of the matter is that researching this can be at times a little soul crushing, a little upsetting, a little disturbing, just in the sense that, like, you know, I'll put it to you like this. If you listen to this podcast, you probably care a whole hell of a lot about video games. You probably love video games. You probably really care about games, and you probably care about the game industry as well. I would also be willing to bet that you are such a big fan of video games that this probably isn't the only gaming news podcast or gaming podcast in general that you listen to. And that's fine. I got nothing wrong with that. I think that's all cool. But I think when I talk about, you know, the idea of some of these news stories being upsetting, what I'm talking about is just like, you know, looking at the overall health of the industry, looking at where things are at and being like, this doesn't look good. This doesn't feel good. This is wrong. This is not the way the game industry should be operating. And there are factors into that, and we're going to try to cover that. I mean, we try our best to cover that stuff whenever we can, but, like, you know, I'm not sitting here talking, I'm not running a fucking true crime podcast. I'm not talking about, you know, mental health. I'm not talking about homelessness. I'm talking about addiction. I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about, like, war. I'm not talking about, like, the truly disturbing, horrible stuff that happens in this world, the suffering of others. It's not what I do, but when I talk about it, these news stories about the video game industry being upsetting, being, you know, disturbing, I mean it in the course of, like, just the overall health of the industry and where I think things are at. So with that said, let's kind of cover the first news story. Xbox is shutting down Arkane Austin, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog, and Roadhouse Games. Getting this news story from Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles. So these are all, so let's back it up just a little bit. When we talk about Bethesda and Microsoft purchasing Bethesda, we often think about BGS, or Bethesda Game Studios. Bethesda Game Studios being the people that make Fallout, the people that make Elder Scrolls. But at some point in Bethesda's career, you know, in its time in the industry, Bethesda started to become not just a game developer, but also a game publisher. Bethesda also started to publish games such as Doom and Rage, you know, by and Wolfenstein, because they owned id. They began to publish things like The Evil Within, right? So when we talk about, you know, Microsoft buying Bethesda, they didn't just buy Bethesda Game Studios. They didn't just buy The Elder Scrolls. They didn't just buy Fallout. They didn't just buy Starfield. They also bought Machine Games and Tango Works, Tango Gameworks and Arkane, right? They bought these other studios that were part of the Bethesda umbrella. And I think this is important to note because you start to get an idea of maybe what Xbox was intending when they made this purchase of Bethesda. And also, if this is any indicator of how Xbox is going to treat the purchase of Activision Blizzard as things go forward. Okay. So, Arkane, Tango, specifically Arkane Austin, Arkane Lyon, and we're going to cover the history of Arkane. We've done this before, but we'll cover the Arkane history in just a moment. But Arkane, Austin, Tango, Gameworks, Alpha Dog, and Roundhouse Games will all be closing down, with some staff joining other teams, according to a memo sent to staff. Staff were told the news over email by Xbox Game Studio head Matt Booty. A copy of the message was first reposted and reported by IGN. Let me see if I can get this. So let's just read everything that Matt Booty wrote to employees. Today, I'm sharing changes we are making to our Bethesda and ZeniMax teams. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which you have nurtured over many decades. To double down on these franchises and invest to build on new ones requires us to look across the business to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others, that some of our colleagues will be leaving us. So reorganizing a few teams and letting go of some people as well. Here are the changes going into effect. Arkane Austin. The studio will close, with some members of the team joining other studios to work on projects across Bethesda. Arkane Austin has a history of making impactful and innovative games, and it is a pedigree that everyone should be proud of. Redfall's previous update will be its last, as we end all development on the game. The game and its servers, remember, it is an online-only game. It is an online required game. The game and its servers will remain online for players to enjoy, and we will provide make good offers to players who purchase the Hero DLC. They did sell an expansion pack. They also tied that expansion pack to pre-orders from the game prior to launch. Alpha Dog Studios. This studio will also close. We appreciate the team's creativity in bringing Doom to new players. Mighty Doom will be sunset on August 7th, and we will be turning off the ability for players to make any purchases in the game. Mighty Doom is a mobile, it is an iPhone, kind of runner action game set in Doom. I think Mighty Doom is okay, but obviously Mighty Doom did not set the world on fire. Tango Gameworks. Tango Gameworks will also close. We are thankful for their contributions to Bethesda around the world. Hi-Fi Rush will continue to be available to players on the platforms it is today. Roundhouse Games. The team at Roundhouse Games will be joining ZeniMax Online Studios. Roundhouse has played a key role in many of our recent game launches, and bringing them into ZOS to work on the Elder Scrolls Online will mean we can do even more to grow the world that millions of players call home. With this consolidation of our Bethesda studio teams, with this consolidation of our Bethesda studio teams, so that we can invest more deeply in our portfolios of games and new IP, a small number of roles across select Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated. Those whose roles will be impacted will be notified today, and we ask that you please treat your departing colleagues with respect and compassion. We will provide our full support to those who are impacted in today's notifications, and through their transitions, including severance benefits informed by local laws. These changes are not a reflection of the creativity and skill of the talented individuals at these teams or the risks they took to try new things. I acknowledge that these changes are also disruptive to the various support teams across ZeniMax and Bethesda that bring our games to market. We are making these tough decisions to create capacity to increase investment in our portfolios and focus on our priority games. Bethesda remains one of the key pillars of Xbox, with a strong portfolio of amazing games and thriving communities. As we look to the future, this is an impressive lineup of games on the horizon. In 2024 alone, we have Starfield Shattered Space, that's the Starfield expansion. We have Fallout 76 Skyline Valley, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and the Elder Scrolls Online's Golden Road. As we align our plans and resources to best set ourselves for success in this complex and changing industry, our teams across Arkane Lyon, Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, Machine Games, ZeniMax Online Studios, and the Bethesda Publishing and Corporate teams will be well positioned to build new IP, explore new game concepts, and expand on our existing franchises. This is part of Microsoft's announcement of the cuts at Bethesda, coming over 3 months after the company announced plans to cut 1,900 staff from its video game workforce, amid a boom of kind of a boom period for Fallout, following the breakout hit on Amazon Prime Video. So, oh my God, where do we even begin? Keep in mind that Resident Evil and Evil Within creator Shinji Mikami had already left Tango Gameworks, to form his own studio, his new studio. The plan being to keep, riding that wave of survival horror. So, if the folks at Tango Gameworks are looking to keep doing what they've been doing, with the exception of, let's talk about this first. Hold on. Let me pull up this news story here because it's fucking ridiculous. So Matt Booty addressed staff at a town hall meeting on Wednesday following the closure of several Bethesda studios. While it could be debated exactly how small the title is by Microsoft's own definition, the platform holder has in the past described Hi-Fi Rush as one of its smaller games, right? For context, the headline that I'm reading here says, Xbox Studio says it needs smaller, award-winning games one day after closing at Tango Gameworks. So, if the idea is that Microsoft is cutting off its fingers to save its whole hand, they shouldn't be talking about how they really wanted to put a ring on the finger that they just cut off, is my analogy. The reason I say that is because if they are looking for award-winning smaller games, they literally had that with Hi-Fi Rush. Again, I did not give any awards to Hi-Fi Rush during my Game of the Year deliberations, but I think we can all agree to some extent that Hi-Fi Rush was one of the top 10 games of 2023. Right? Everyone wants to talk about Alan Wake. Everybody wants to talk about Baldur's Gate, Spider-Man, whatever. Everyone wants to talk about these big games. But the best shining example of high quality games out of Microsoft last year was literally Hi-Fi Rush. No offense to Starfield. I don't even know if they put out it. I mean, it definitely wasn't Motorsport. Forza Motorsport. They had it. They had it with Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush won the 2023 CEDEC Award for Sound. It won the 2023 Game Award for Best Audio Design. It won the Tin Pan Alley Award for Best Music in a Game from it also won at the New York Game Awards. It won at GDC. It had also won a BAFTA. Other than giving it Game of the Goddamn Year, I don't know what more you could possibly ask for from the little game that could. I hate to be like, I didn't love Hi-Fi Rush, but it was one of the coolest things that, you know, Microsoft has done in a very long time. In a very, very long time. And I don't know, well, I do know. It's not that they set up Tango Gameworks to fail. It's that, at least I don't think so. It's that, because we kind of were just talking about the studios that Microsoft bought when they bought Bethesda, right? Including Tango Gameworks. I think at the end of the day, if you go back to what Matt, the studios that Matt Booty just mentioned, ZeniMax Online, Arkane Lyon, Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, Machine Games. Those were the studios that Microsoft only cared about when it came to purchasing Bethesda. Microsoft wanted the next Doom. Microsoft wanted the next, Wolfenstein game. They wanted the next game from the people that made Fallout and Bethesda, Bethesda Starfield and all that stuff. I don't think at the end of the day, Microsoft really cared that much about Tango Gameworks, right? Because when you think about Tango Gameworks, okay, we have The Evil Within 1 and 2, games that have its fans that also didn't set the world on fire, right? Ghostwire Tokyo did not set the world on fire. And Hi-Fi Rush is the closest Tango Gameworks ever came to creating a game that did set the world on fire. And that was a much more small, modest game than The Evil Within 1, 2, or Ghostwire Tokyo. Which meant that, when they talk about investing in Bethesda, what they mean is they want games with big returns. They want to make hundreds of millions of dollars off the release of their next big Bethesda game, whether it comes from id or Arkane Lyon or wherever. That's what that's what Microsoft is after, right? The only reason Microsoft was producing games like Pentiment from Obsidian and like Hi-Fi Rush was to try to win over the hearts and minds of people that were looking for more unique, smaller scale games. The problem is that small scale games, even if they are popular, they often don't make back the money that a zillion-dollar company is looking for, right? Now, let's not even get into how profitable of a company Microsoft is. But we all know that profitable companies don't stay profitable if they don't address some of the least profitable areas of their business. Unfortunately, in this case, Redfall, a game that completely shit the fucking bed. In fact, I believe that if Microsoft had canceled Redfall, before it came out, I think Arkane Austin probably could have still been around, right? Because Arkane Austin produced games that people really fucking like. Let's cover that Arkane history right now. Because there's a lot to uncover here. Let's do it. Let's pull this up. Let's see here. Well, I guess that's how we're going to do it. So, Arkane used to be a single game studio, working across both Austin and in France. I see Austin, I see France. And what I mean by that is when they were developing Dishonored, it was Austin and Lyon working together, right? Then we have, and that was in 2012, Dishonored 2012. Dishonored 2 was the first title developed separately entirely by Arkane Lyon in France. And that was in 2016. 2017 saw the release of both Prey, which again, a game that I don't necessarily love, but I know that people love Prey. People consider Prey to be a goddamn masterpiece, and more power to them. I got nothing wrong with it, right? But again, 2012 Dishonored was made by both studios. Dishonored 2 in 2016 was made by Arkane Lyon. In 2017, Prey was made by Arkane Austin. Arkane Lyon that same year put out Dishonored Death of the Outsider. Okay? 2019, Arkane Lyon worked with Machine Games on both Wolfenstein Youngblood and Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, Cyberpilot being the VR game. And while Arkane Lyon was working on those Wolfenstein games, they were also working on Deathloop, which came out in 2021. People also really, really like Deathloop. But after Arkane Austin put out Prey in 2017, that's when they started working on Redfall, right? Roundhouse Studios, my understanding is that Roundhouse Studios also helped with Redfall. But you mean to tell me that from 2017 to whenever they got bought by Microsoft, you mean to tell me that no one could have stopped this from happening? I'm not saying Redfall killed Arkane Austin, but you start to see this scenario where even when Arkane Austin is successful, like with Prey, it's still not enough for the company because it seems like the only thing they really care about is Arkane Lyon. And you know what? I think, if I'm being real honest, it would take maybe a Redfall type game or two for Arkane Lyon to go to the same way of Arkane Austin. I really think so. I don't think Microsoft has the patience for this type of thing, despite the fact that they could have stopped these issues from happening in the first place. So they want smaller award-winning games. If we take a look at the release date for 2024, let me pull that up. We're going to go to Game Informer. That was where I went. It is May. It's May. Sorry, I was in April. The next game by Microsoft is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. A game that is very small, very short in the traditional sense, but is a game that has been in development for a very, very long time. It's made by Ninja Theory. And I have this sick feeling in my stomach, and I know other people have kind of expressed it in the wake of this news. I'm not saying anything new and profound. At least I try not to. But I have this sick feeling in my gut that if Senua's Saga does not sell the zillions of copies that they probably need to recoup all the tech, investments they've made into it, the Ninja Theory could go the same way. I really think so. I really, really think so. Ninja Theory was a separate purchase outside of, Bethesda, outside of, Activision Blizzard. But May 21st, Senua's Saga, and I wonder if that will be the last game that Ninja Theory ever makes. while I think Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is in a position to be one of the smaller award-winning type games that Microsoft and Matt Booty especially have kind of alluded to, the fact is that I don't think it's the big seller the way a Starfield would be, or any of, you know, the next Doom game, for example. So I think that Microsoft is done trying to play the hearts and minds game. I think Xbox in general is done trying to be a brand that is the feel-good championing of diverse, unique, original games. I think that stuff is gone. I think it's dead. I think what we're probably going to see now is Xbox doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on its big name franchises. I don't think you're going to see a lot of original IP. They talk about, original IP and all that stuff. I think if you see anything in the form of original IP, the closest thing we're probably going to get is a brand deal, the way that Microsoft has partnered with Disney Disney in general, for both Indiana Jones and for the upcoming Blade game. So, you know, while we can say, hey, they haven't made a Blade game since they haven't made a Blade game since motherfuckers were trying to ice skate uphill, to quote Blade the movie. They've not made those in a while. That's probably the closest we're going to be seeing from original IP from at least from the Bethesda side of things for a while. I think we probably see a new Doom or a new Wolfenstein at some point. We're going to get another Elder Scrolls. We're going to get another Fallout. We're going to get, you know, if we get a new, you know, another game from Arkane after Blade, it's probably like a Dishonored 3 or something. But even then, like at some point they start to cut at, the messed up part is you start to cut away at your small B tier games like Ghostwire Tokyo, like Hi-Fi Rush. And at some point, what could have been an A game now becomes the closest thing to a B game that you have. No disrespect to Dishonored. But the more you cut away at these smaller original games, the more your like lesser tier franchises start to become closer to the chopping block, which is kind of my concern with this stuff. I just don't think that Xbox is, I think Bethesda is going to keep doing the things that we know Bethesda to do, and not what we think Bethesda has the potential to do, is I guess what I'm thinking. And I think in terms of, you know, Xbox owned studios outside of the Bethesda purchase, outside of the Activision purchase, I think we're going to see Fable, Forza, Gears, Halo, like the things that you know Xbox to be, but even then, Halo Infinite didn't hit the way that they were probably hoping it would. Forza Motorsport has not gotten it done. So then the question becomes, like, if they announce a new console next year, if Xbox decides, fuck it, we're going to cut and run on this console generation, and we're going to kick off the new one with the same shit that you know us from back in the 360 era, if that doesn't hit, and they've already gotten rid of all the studios that could have been in a position to make smaller, more interesting games. I mean, how many games can Obsidian possibly make at one time? They're working on the Outer Worlds 2. They're working on Avowed. They're working on all this shit. And people are like, I really hope they make a New Vegas sequel. I really hope they get to make a New Vegas. Like, if we're getting it in a Fallout game anytime soon, it's going to be the Fallout 3 remastered, which has been rumored for some time. And the reason that Fallout 3 is probably the next thing that we see out of traditional Bethesda is because we know, and you know, and I know, everybody knows. Go ask the milkman, he knows that a Fallout 3 remastered would do gangbusters financially compared to a Dishonored 3, compared to a Ghostwire Tokyo 2, compared to a even a Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, compared to a Hi-Fi Rush 2, compared to another unique IP, like Avowed, right? And the Microsoft and these companies exist in a system that promises infinite growth to shareholders. We live in a finite world. Let me rephrase it. Let me remind you. When it comes to the resources, time, and energy that people have on this earth, it's a finite system. But the system in which these companies operate promises infinite growth to shareholders. You can see where the problem starts to get into, but I'm going to save my, socialist, communist, rant for another podcast. And just remind you that, like, infinite growth. Shareholders look to Satya Nadella and Phil Spencer and Matt Booty and other, execs within Microsoft, and they want their dividends. They want that stock ticker to go up. And what we've seen time and time again is that the best way to make that stock ticker go up, when faced with the smallest amount of problem, is to cut and run. Leadership, gets into this position where they've overspent, they've overscheduled, they've overbudgeted, they've done this, they've done that. And the people who were caught in those decisions are the ones that they can let go. I hate to say it because it sounds fucked up, but Xbox is out here doing some Embracer Group type shit. I know, right? Like who would have thought that of all the companies, if we look at the platform holders, right? And I know the writing was probably on the walls because of how much they were spending on companies like Bethesda and Activision Blizzard and all that stuff. But for a company that's in third place, that is desperately trying to revitalize their Xbox brand and make people excited and happy about the idea of becoming Xbox owners, whatever. And also think in a world where even if these types of business moves continue to happen, I think people are a lot more in tune with it. Here in Canada, I think about, I guess I am going to get into that socialist rant. I apologize. But I think about how people are having a conversation around, Loblaws, our grocery operators in Canada, right? Our grocery operators, having these record high profits amidst, sky high prices on groceries. People, like, literally, you can go to TikTok and social media and all this stuff, and people are like, 6 months ago, I bought these oranges. They were, $5. I don't know. Now, 6 months later, they're, $6.99. Like, what's going on? I think people are a little more in tune, in part due to the way the internet has now allowed people to share information and misinformation and all that stuff. But I think people are a lot more in tune now with the working conditions of the working class. I think people are more in tune with the decision-making process that comes from the ownership class. And I think people are a lot more in tune with the way this game is played. I think that's also why you see organizations like the United States government try to shut down TikTok, because the last thing, the U.S. government wants people to do is talk about the working conditions of the ownerships and how people that vote Republican or Democrat, I promise I'm going to get this back to Xbox in a moment, but those working class people have more in common with each other than they do the people that represent them. Right? So I think when people hear that, Xbox is saying one thing and doing another, I think it further damages their brand. And if that next console generation goes about the same way as it does with this, like, I think Xbox as a brand, and maybe even Xbox as a box that you buy, is probably dead. I think if anything, Microsoft just starts to become a traditional third-party publisher, right? Oh, they're the people that put out Halo, and they're the people that put out Call of Duty. And at some point, and I know this sounds crazy, think about what Activision was before Microsoft bought them. Activision was the Blizzard people, because Blizzard was kind of always separate from Activision to some extent. But what was Activision? Activision was the Call of Duty people, and that's it. So imagine if the public perception and people turn on Phil Spencer, people turn on Matt Booty, people turn on Sarah Bond and all these other execs in Xbox because, they've listened to a podcast like this, or they've seen a TikTok of like, oh, but I thought you said we were going to get more games like Hi-Fi Rush, not less. Like if it turns in that way, because they realize that Xbox doesn't care. As soon as more and more people realize that Xbox does not care about making video games and making good video games and making their customers happy, and once people realize that Xbox really only cares about making money, I think the Xbox brand has very little legs to stand on as it is and could be very well done. The problem is that if Xbox, the brand, were to die, Microsoft really just becomes what Activision was when they bought them. A publisher that is putting out the biggest of the big games with little to no ambition and little to no interest on the B tier games, the smaller games, and they just become the packaged good business, right? You just think of, Microsoft as this kind of unambitious, faceless conglomerate, like I would have to think about Xbox the way I think about fucking Tide laundry soap, right? Of like, well, I guess I just have to buy this, or this is the only thing that I use, or whatever, right? Like that's where we're at. And it's because people are starting to think a little more consciously about, the business of video games, especially big AAA games, right? People start to think about the business of, game developers unionizing and sticking up for each other and demanding better working conditions, better pay, better benefits, better all of that stuff, right? So I told you I was going to try to wrap this all around. I just think people in general are, sensitive is not the right word, but I think more in tuned with, McDonald's acknowledged to their investors they are losing, brand loyalty and brand recognition with the cost conscious consumer. And they're losing it because McDonald's would rather sell less product at a higher price than more product at a less price. That's literally the game they're playing right now. Right? And that's the way the grocery industry is going. That's the way a lot of these industries are going, right? They actually care less and less about selling more and more items. They care more and more about selling it at a higher price. And if that means less games from Xbox, the company that owns fucking every developer under the sun, if that means that less games come out of them, but they are bigger and bigger games, it's probably what's going to happen. And this will probably not be the last time, maybe this year, that we share a similar news story about Xbox and Microsoft Game Studios in general. Just real quick, Redfall was set to get an offline mode this month before Arkane Austin was closed, meaning that Microsoft doesn't even care about the preservation of games like Redfall, because now it will continue to be an always online game. And once they shut down the servers, the game's done. Doesn't matter if the game's terrible or not. We've seen similar conversations come up around The Crew, right? The Crew is not a great game, but people should probably be able to play The Crew, right? Redfall is not a great game, but people should probably be able to play Redfall if they want. And then of course, Arkane Austin confirming that the Redfall Hero Pass, that was the DLC, has been canceled with make goods on the way. And then the final news story related to Xbox is that Xbox has been trying to reboot Perfect Dark, which was announced via a CG trailer in 2020. That game is reportedly in a very rough state. Speaking on the Giant Bombcast, journalist Jeff Grubb spoke about the game in the wake of the closure of several Xbox studios on Tuesday. Quote, "The fallout from this is I've been hearing more and more that Perfect Dark is in a rough state. Sound like it's in a very rough state. It doesn't sound like it's really come together in any way." VG247 journalist Alex Donaldson echoed this, describing it as a team really trying hard to push a boulder up a steep hill. Video game historian Liam Robertson said, "From what little I've heard about the development of the new Perfect Dark, it sounds like a future video in a making. Just a big protracted mess." And as we know, when it comes to big protracted messes, i.e. Redfall, it's the last thing that Microsoft wants, because it turns out Microsoft doesn't even want small successful games, let alone big pieces of shit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Perfect Dark gets canceled at some point. In June of 2023, IGN reported that the reboot was, quote, "in the earliest stages of development and was still likely 2 to 3 years away from release." While the project was announced in 2020, nothing has been shown of it since, following years of reported setbacks that have stalled development. These allegedly include a fraught co-development partnership with Certain Affinity, which worked on the game from 2019 to 2021, and high attrition at the initiative. VGC reported in March of 2022 that the Xbox studio had, quote, "seen a fast and furious wave of senior departures over the previous year." So yeah, things are going great at Xbox. I don't know. What do you mean? Things are fantastic, man. Never been better. And then the games that do come out don't even set the world on fire. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, maybe we'll get on to some more positive news. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I just want to quickly say that, if there are questions around like, why am I so harsh on Microsoft or why am I so harsh on Sony when it comes to studio closures, compared to a studio or a company like Nintendo, it's one, we don't see this as much with Nintendo because Nintendo is literally in the business of making video games, and that is about it. Yes, they are in the business of making money, and if they aren't making money, they will find ways to make money, including cutting staff, whatever, as it comes to making shareholders happy and all that stuff. So don't Nintendo does not live in a different world than Microsoft or Sony or anything like that, but that's all that Nintendo has. Sony, can always try to sell you a TV instead of a PlayStation. They can always try to sell you headphones instead of, a PlayStation. They can always make movies like Madam Web that you go and see. Sorry, I'm being told by my producer that nobody went to see Madam Web. Point is, Microsoft also are the Windows people. They're also investing heavily into AI. We'll see how that works out for them. I'm sure Sony is as well. But the point is that like with Microsoft, there are so many other things that are profitable about the company that they could cut and run with a lot of Xbox and be totally fine. Which makes the news story about this so much more harsh because it's a company you'd like to think that could afford to spend more time with these developers and studios to figure out ways to make that money. With PlayStation, it's one of the few profitable things within Sony in general. In fact, it's one of the most profitable portfolios that Sony has in general, especially in a world where the movie studios are facing a lot of the same problems that the big AAA gaming industry is. And actually, we'll talk about the film industry when we get to Warner Brothers later on in the show. With Nintendo, what else does Nintendo do? They sold their stakes in the Seattle Mariners a long time ago, so they're not even in the baseball business anymore. Fun fact: at one point, Nintendo did own stake in the Seattle Mariners. The point is that that's what Nintendo does. Nintendo is in the business of making video games. Always have been and always will be. There will come a time when Nintendo games, I shouldn't speak with such confidence in general. My therapist says otherwise. Point is, sorry, not trying to have a Tony Soprano moment. The point is that there may come a time when Nintendo games appear on non-Nintendo consoles, right? They may show up on PC or something. But at the end of the day, Nintendo is in the business of making video games. Sony is in the business of producing electronics. And Microsoft is in the business of doing fucking everything. You know, except making washers and dryers, I guess. So you can see the approach to cutting and running when it comes to some of these, you know, losses within their portfolios. You know, the approach has been very different. The other thing I'll say is that Nintendo is one of the only company out of the big three, the other two being Sony and Microsoft. They're the only company that are actively preparing to launch a new console generation in what has been one of the most fucked console generations that I have ever seen. I think anyone has ever seen. Remember that the PlayStation is almost like 4 years old. It doesn't, the PlayStation 5 is almost 4 years old. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like we've barely scratched the surface of this current generation of consoles. And yet, Sony plans on putting out a PlayStation 5 Pro. To do what? To play what games? To do what? So that I can run God of War Ragnarok at 120 frames per second? So that I can run God of War Ragnarok at 30 frames per second at 8K resolution with ray tracing? The fuck out of here. And I would also say, just while on the topic, if Microsoft is going to try to produce the most powerful console ever created and kickstart the next generation of consoles early, I said next year, who the fuck knows? I assume that they announce it next year and then it comes out in 2026, but I you know, who knows? We could all be dead by then. Wouldn't that be nice? Point is, I don't think a more powerful console from Xbox gets them out of the problems they're in. I don't think a new powerful PlayStation gets Sony out of the problems that they're in, because their problem with Sony is that they've tried to put all their eggs into the live service basket, forcing, you know, legendarily single player studios like Naughty Dog to figure out how to make an online shooter, among other things. So, you know, I think the woes from PlayStation have been a lot more slower coming because they've been so successful in selling hardware that people want to buy. But at the end of the day, has their software lineup really been that much better? Yes, they've had more successful games. But at the end of the day, like, the promise of PlayStation exclusives, have they matched what potential the PlayStation 5 originally had? I'll leave that for you to decide. I don't have a PlayStation 5. I don't know. I can tell you that the promises that Xbox had when the Xbox Series X came out and the software that they've brought alongside it have not, it's not adding up. I don't mean to be Scott Steiner, but the math does not add up. Anyways, I'm just saying that the reason why Nintendo may feel different is that that's all they know. That's all they do. That's all they know, right? They get a little bit of that money from Pokemon and all the Pokemon things that Pokemon does. And yeah, they got that movie. They got that Super Mario Brothers movie. They're working on that, you know, Legend of Zelda movie. They got that, what do they got? That theme park, the Universal Studios theme park. But Nintendo makes games, dog. And that's about it. Games and game hardware. And that's why maybe as of right now, we haven't seen the same cuts and bullshit from Nintendo. And again, it'd be real fucked up if they did that while also trying to, you know, get ready for a console launch. Let's move on to Sony news. PlayStation has officially performed a U-turn after the Helldivers 2 Steam backlash scraps mandatory PSN account linking. They put out a tweet. This tweet came out on May 5th. May the 5th be with you. It says, Helldivers fans, we've heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update. The May 6 update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players and for current players beginning May 30th, will not be moving forward. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Thanks again for your continued support for Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on future plans. Remember, Arrowhead was not super stoked about the idea that PlayStation was going to force them to, integrate that account linking feature after the game launched broken in the first place. So people are saying that like both Arrowhead and fans won. I don't know if that's true or not. I will say that Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut has a multiplayer mode in it. Ghost of Tsushima, if you don't know, is a single player open world action game. But it does feature a online multiplayer mode that will still have on required online linking. Of course, it's also going to be how you get your trophies and your trophy dogs and all that stuff. But yeah, just a heads up, you will still need that. Now, I think that people are probably going to be okay with that because it is not a requirement that was changed halfway through release or whatever, but just a heads up. You will probably at some point, put your right foot in, put your right foot out, put your left foot in, you shake it all about as it relates to, listen, Sony's going to get that data. They're going to have another data breach or whatever. They're going to leak your data, but they're going to get that data first. Just a reminder. Anyways, they've made the U-turn. Hooray for gamers. And which is fine. I know I was out there talking that shit, oh boo-hoo crybaby gamers, but at the end of the day, I wasn't playing a lot of Helldivers 2 anyways, at this point. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. That's fine. I don't know if PlayStation had much of a leg to stand on if they were able to cave this easily. Like, I know that there's a lot of negative Steam reviews and, all that stuff on the Helldivers 2 page on Steam. A lot of angry people online, rattling keys or chains or whatever they're doing, waving pitchforks in the air. It's a lot like that scene in Shrek. You know what I'm talking about? Point is if PlayStation was going to fold this easily, maybe they didn't have much of a leg to stand on it to begin with. Let's move on to Nintendo. Nintendo confirms it will announce its next console this fiscal year. The company has also announced stop me if you've heard this one before. A video game company is going to have a conference in June. Whoa, bro. That's true. Nintendo Direct confirmed for June, focusing on Switch titles for late 2024. I can't imagine Nintendo has a lot of Switch titles in general, but as of right now, there will be an announcement in June. They have not confirmed the actual date yet. And that the next console will be confirmed to arrive before next April. So again, here's what I would like. Here's what I would do. Here's what I think I've talked about this before. Here's what I would do if I'm Nintendo, right? You're trying to sell all these Switch games and Switch consoles and whatnot for the holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Festivus, Winterfest, whatever, you name it, right? All those holidays. I should have just said the holidays instead of rattling off the holidays and then giving up, because there's probably other holidays that I'm missing. But the point is, Nintendo wants to sell people old Nintendo Switch console with new Nintendo Switch games for the holidays. And that the console is confirmed to arrive before next April. So here's what I would do is I would probably start to announce that. New Switch sometime in February. Because you don't want to do it in January. You don't want to do it too early in January. Because then you have a bunch of people mad that they bought old console hardware when they could have waited, which they should have waited, but whatever. I bet if you give a kid a Switch or, an adult a Switch or whatever, like, here's the thing. There are people that are playing games on PlayStation 5s right now that are totally happy and could not give less of a shit about anything that the PlayStation 5 Pro could possibly offer. There are people playing PS5 games right now on a PS5. People playing PS4 games on a PS5. People playing probably PS2 and PS1 games on a PS5. And they're just like, I just needed a console. I just wanted a console. I just wanted to play whatever. They don't give a shit about playing God of War Ragnarok in 8K. The point is that I bet if you applied that same logic to people playing Nintendo games on Switches right now, same could apply. They're probably happier than pigs in mud, to which I say more power to you. There's nothing wrong with that. That being said, this is an industry that is trying to move forward and trying to push the technical envelope in every way possible. Oh, nice. We have a car alarm happening outside my window. Oh, hey, it closed. Okay, cool. It stopped. Awesome. Fantastic. Point is you don't want to upset the people who bought them during the holidays, the winter holidays. So I say you announce the console in sometime mid-February, and that gives you plenty of time to get that console out, get the message out in about a month and a half. I really don't think, like, it's Nintendo, dog. What do you need to say? Look, man, it's the Switch 2. It plays your old Switch games. The Switch 2 games do not play on the old Switch. The Joy-Cons are magnetic. They're better controllers, whatever. Here are the games coming out. Like, you really don't need this big thing because it's Nintendo. Nintendo already knows who cares about their console, right? So while it's important to make sure they have a good Nintendo Direct in June to talk about the 2024 games that are coming out, they may be announcing games at this June Direct that don't have a release date, right? That don't have like, oh, here's a 5-second trailer of Mario's hat. And you're like, I don't know what that means. And then you find out, oh, Mario's hat's going to be in the Switch 2 game or whatever. So that's what I think that is happening with this Switch stuff is they will announce plenty of games. Well, I don't know about plenty. They will announce some amount of games for 2024 and then probably tease some games expecting to come out within the release period for the Switch 2, if I had to guess. Speaking of canceling games, Alan Wake developer Remedy has canceled a multiplayer project. No, it is not the Control multiplayer game. This is Project Kestrel, which was being created by a small team working in part with Tencent. So I feel like we do this every week, every episode, but let me give you an update on Remedy's upcoming games. Control 2 continues to be in the proof of concept stage. The plans for this sequel are ambitious, and we have seen good progress both in the designs and in the game build. We will continue at this stage for the next few quarters. We focus on proving the identified key elements before moving to the next stage and scaling up the team. It also noted that Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake progressed into the production readiness stage. We have gained clarity on the style and scope of the game, and we have an exceptionally well-organized team working on it. With these accomplishments, we are excited about the project and its future success. But it seems like the next game from Remedy is probably going to be Codename Condor, which is that multiplayer game that takes place in the Control universe. That, to me, seems like what their next game is probably going to be. Especially because that's the game they've worked on the most since Alan Wake 2. So for those looking for Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake, you're just going to have to wait it out. And for people looking for Control 2, well, that's going to come probably after all this other stuff. But the time being, they have canceled Project Kestrel, as previously known as Codename Vanguard. It was a premium cooperative multiplayer game. And that's about it. That's the way the cookie crumbles. It doesn't seem like a big loss. Seems like they're just going to shuffle people around to work on the other games, which I think makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. Okay. Final news story. Save the best for last, damn it. Everyone's favorite CEO, David Zaslav. You may know David Zaslav as the guy that is pushing Warner Brothers Discovery further and further into the shit. If you don't know him as that, you don't know David Zaslav. Point is, where do we start? I was about to get ahead of myself. Warner Brothers CEO says disappointing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League release overshadowed its overall studio's financials. Now, I just want to stress that Warner Brothers last year produced one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. So when they go, and I'm not trying to defend the video game portfolio that Warner Brothers has. I don't care that much. I don't even care that much about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But man, The Flash is one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Not adjusted for inflation, I should mention. Box office bombs. Let's go to box office bombs. So actually, here's the interesting thing. Is 2023 in general was a huge box office bomb year for the industry. Huge box office bomb. The Flash lost about $155 million. And I'm talking about that because we're talking about Warner Brothers. But for context, Haunted Mansion lost about $117 million. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny lost about $143 million. Wish, which is another Disney movie. You'll notice that there are 4 Disney movies on this list, the fifth one being Warner Brothers, but we'll talk about this anyways. The Disney animated movie Wish lost $131 million. And I will say that when we talk about when I say The Flash is the biggest box office bomb of all time, yeah. Okay, fine. But it is outdone by Disney. The Marvels lost $237 million when, if you don't adjust for inflation, The Marvels is now the biggest box office bomb of all time. However, The Flash is the 7th biggest box office bomb of all time when you don't adjust for inflation. So Warner Brothers did not necessarily have a banger year when it comes to big titled, movies and things like that. But also not made any better by pieces of shit like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And that's why I think this whole David Zaslav comment is goofy. But here we go. During a financial presentation, David Zaslav said the studio's division, which includes Warner Brothers Pictures, DC, Warner Brothers Television Group, Warner Brothers Games, and New Line Cinema, saw a decrease in revenue compared to the previous year. Zaslav said this was mainly due to the difference between the successful release of Hogwarts Legacy last year and the disappointing release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Warner Brothers Discovery's great storytelling IP, including Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Superman, and many other parts of the DC universe, are largely underused. We are hard at work fixing that. It's a core value and a key advantage for us. We have the characters and the stories people love and yearn for everywhere in the world in every language. Unfortunately, the studio's Q1 financials were overshadowed by the tough comparison at games following the great performance of Hogwarts Legacy last year, and the disappointing release of Suicide Squad in Q1 in our gamings group. Zaslav's comments were later echoed by Warner Brothers Discovery CFO Gunnar Wendfels, who said the difference between both game releases had led to a $200 million impact for their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization during the first quarter. And these companies are always going to look for a scapegoat, right? Everybody needs their Jack Perry. Everybody needs their Jack Perry. Though it's funny, I wonder if Warner Brothers has looked at the ratings for AEW recently. I wonder if does David Zaslav know who CM Punk and Jack Perry are? We're not going to talk wrestling, I promise. What I'm saying is every CEO needs a scapegoat. Every hero needs a villain. I just find it funny that that's the only thing they can point to and be like, see, that's why it's bad. It's because they don't produce anything else. Like Warner Brothers doesn't produce anything else of note, of value, that is ambitious or interesting enough for people to care, which is why they don't even bother pointing to The Flash. Or just like, listen, if you like The Flash, I don't care. Like, I'm not here to say, like, there are plenty of box office bombs that are good movies. Like, I'm not here I'm just telling you that, like, and if you like Suicide Squad Kill Justice League, fine, more power to you. But I'm just telling you that, like, we're talking about two big ass bombs here, and the CEO does not want to address one of the bombs because they would rather take it out on the video games because, I don't know, they think that, like, the video game industry is smaller than the movie industry, which is not even close to true. Video games are bigger than movies now. If the Beatles are bigger than Jesus Christ and God, I like to think that the video game industry, we're getting in trouble for this one. If the Beatles are bigger than God, then I think, let's do some Scott Steiner math. Okay. The Beatles greater sign God, greater than sign God, then video games greater than sign movie industry. It's my math. That's it for news. Lord have mercy, that is it for news. Let's talk about the games that I have been playing. I fired up a new save game of Fallout 4 because I'm a Fallout boy. And I think I'm done with Fallout 76. And the reason why I say that I think I'm done with Fallout 76 is because Fallout 76 is a very grindy game. There is a lot of busy work and upkeep and maintenance that you need to do in order to be successful in the game. And I'm not saying that, like, Fallout 4 doesn't have that stuff in it, but at some point in Fallout 76, I just got tired of needing to repair my armor, repair my weapons, to maintain my hunger meter, to maintain my, radiation poisoning, to maintain my thirst meter. Like, I got annoyed with the fact that there are things about Fallout 76 that are different in Fallout 4 that make Fallout 76 a harder game so that you spend more time with it and engage with it and eventually power your way out of the, roadblocks that game puts in front of you. So I went back to Fallout 4 as a result. And, I've been enjoying my time with Fallout 4. The mod scene is still quite broken in Fallout 4. I have put a bunch of mods in Fallout 4, but nothing too crazy at the moment. At least for me personally. And I'm kind of in that period where I'm just kind of playing with my food a little bit. Little Kitty Big City came out today. That's also on Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Little Kitty Big City is also out on Game Pass, so maybe I'll download and play some Little Kitty Big City. But next week, Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut is out on PC. So there's stuff out there for me to play. I'm looking forward to playing a bunch of games. I'm just kind of in this waiting period. And I'll say with Fallout 4, like, even with the mods and all that stuff, like Fallout 4 is an older looking game at this point in time. Nothing too crazy about that. When you stop to think about it. I don't know why sorry, I'm getting distracted by my library of games. But I also have the DLC for Fallout 4, so I think my thought is that I'm going. You don't immediately unlock the DLC in Fallout 4. So there's a couple of there's Nuka World, which is like an amusement park that you go to and probably fight robots or drink cola or whatever you do. There's also Far Harbor, which is another DLC. And I should mention, just for people that are curious, a lot of times with open world games, the DLC that is added to that game is often in a separate open world environment that is detached from the main world. The reason for that is because, let's say you've been running around irradiated Boston in, Fallout 4 for 150 hours. It would be really weird if you bought the DLC and then they just plopped in something in the middle of what used to be nothing. So what typically happens is they put like a character or some thing, some vehicle to get you to the story, in a part of the world, that doesn't make it very obvious, doesn't make it a big deal, right? So for example, in Nuka World, you at some point travel to this amusement park, right? It's not in the main Fallout world. It is something that you visit outside of it, right? So I'm not quite there yet with that DLC, but I think my thought process is that, like, I'm going to probably play the DLC, but I probably we'll see. I don't know if I'll actually get around to playing through a full version of Fallout 4 again. I think I'm probably just going to do a bunch of side quests and level up my character. And then I will, do the DLC, but I don't know if I'm going to play through that whole story again, especially because it wasn't that long ago that I played through the main story. But I'm enjoying my time with Fallout 4. I enjoy the mods. If you have not, for people who haven't played Fallout 4 yet, you can easily download mods for the game within the game itself, even if you have a console, like a PS5, Xbox or something. And if you don't want to significantly change the way that game plays, like for example, in Fallout 4, I've downloaded a bunch of weapons that weren't originally in the game. I've downloaded weather and graphical like tweaks to it. So like I've changed the way the graphics look in Fallout 4. I installed the Fallout. There's a mod that gives you the Fallout 76 radio station in Fallout 4. So you get the music from Fallout 76 as well as the radio person and all that stuff. I've downloaded mods that make weapons that make certain items not have any weight to them. So it makes it easier for you to carry a bunch of shit around because they don't take up weight, which means potentially spending less time in the Pip-Boy. I've added mods that allow me to further customize weapons and all that stuff. And all I'm saying is, like, if that seems complicated and crazy, you can do it from within the game menu, even on consoles. You don't need to do some funny PC business. And in some cases, I would recommend some of those mods because they will definitely make even your first time around playing Fallout 4 a hell of a lot easier of an experience as well. So I've been playing at Fallout 4. Going to continue to play Fallout 4. I mean, it's the thing. The more I play the game, the more the mods reveal themselves in terms of like, oh, I get this gun and this stuff, and oh, now I can run around with a tuxedo and look like James Bond. Even though that's not really a thing you would do in the radiated wasteland. It's just goofy fun time. But I was talking to a friend and I was like, man, I found Horizon Forbidden West to be just boring as sin. It's not the worst game I've ever played. By no means is Horizon Forbidden West the worst video game I've ever played. I just found it to be pretty boring. It was gorgeous, but boring, kind of like a hot girl without a personality. Kind of like Brian's girlfriend in Family Guy, if you know what I'm talking about. Jillian. There's a Family Guy reference for you. Point is that I felt kind of, how would I put it? I felt kind of burnt out by some of these, open world action games, right? Your third person open world action games after kind of, falling off the cliff, 90 hours in or whatever. When I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, to feeling like Horizon Forbidden West had a pretty slow start. I was forgiving of that. And then the game reveals itself to be pretty boring. I was like, man, do I really want to play Ghost of Tsushima? Like, do I really want to commit to a potentially another open world game where I feel like it's a bit of a slog? But speaking to a friend of mine, he said, GnittWitt, he didn't call me GnittWitt, but actually there are some people who call me GnittWitt at work, which is hi people at work. Point is that my friend was like, no, you should really give it a shot. So I will give it a shot. I will play it. I will probably be picking it up upon release. And I'll report back and let you know how it is. I'm very curious about the game because one, I've not played a Sucker Punch game in a long time. I really like the Sly Cooper games. I really like the Infamous games. Infamous, Second Son and First Light were pretty cool games on PS4. I remember like Infamous Second Son on PS4 just being like a real technical showpiece at the time of like, wow, look at Seattle. Look at all these cool superhero abilities. Though I did find the game to be a little bit more difficult and maybe not as fun as Infamous 1 and 2 and Festival of Blood were on PS3 originally. But point is that I am going to commit and give Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut a shot. I'm also curious to see what the multiplayer mode is like. I don't know how much of that multiplayer I'll play, but I'll give them my data. I already said I would. But that isn't for another week. So I'm assuming that when we come back and talk about more games, it'll probably be Little Kitty Big City, which I'll mess around with. I played the demo for that. It's like there's a lot of platforming in it. So I will say, if you're thinking like Little Kitty Big City, isn't that just Stray? It is like, it's kind of Stray like. Well, listen, I'll confirm how Little Kitty Big City is, but I did briefly play the demo of it during a Steam Next Fest. But it's like a 3D, third person, jumping, running around, platforming game where you play as a cat, but in a much more cartoonish world, not a dystopian robot future or any of that stuff. So I'll mess around with that. I'll keep playing some Fallout. There was this part of me that was like, I should reinstall Horizon Forbidden West and play through that Burning Shores expansion, or just clean up some of the, try to squeeze my money's worth now that I don't have to think about that boring story. I can just clean up a bunch of side quests in Horizon Forbidden West. I don't know if I'll do that, man. I don't know. I just feel like I could run around in any open world. Why would I continue to do it in Horizon Forbidden West? But we'll see. The other game that I've been playing is I fired up a little bit of Mafia Definitive Edition. I kind of was bouncing around from game to game to game. I tried out Harold Halibut. Didn't do much for me. I fired up a bunch of different games that I was curious to check out. I went back and played a little bit of Neo. I played a little bit of Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. But I played a little bit of Mafia Definitive Edition. Because for some reason, I just can't get enough of those open world action games. And it turns out I need to forget everything I know about Mafia, the Mafia, because I completely forgot that Mafia is not an open world action game. Well, it is and it isn't. Let me explain. When you fire up the main story of Mafia, the game takes place in the open world, but every mission, every story mission that you go on is kind of compounded into a traditional level of a video game, in the sense that there are cutscenes, it fades to black, comes back up, new cutscene. You go drive to, leave whatever area your character is in at the start of that cutscene, drive to or go to whatever area of the open world you need to go to do the mission. You do the mission. Maybe there's a cutscene in between. Fates of Black comes back up, next level. There is no like, go explore the open world at your own pace within the context of the main story mode, which is different than how Grand Theft Auto does it, which is different than how Horizon Forbidden West, Fallout 4, like literally every other open world game I can possibly think of does this differently, right? They let you drive to the story mission if you want, or you can explore their open world however you want. And it's not a bad way of doing things. Like there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. It's just that you need to remember that Mafia was a PlayStation 2 game that was trying to ape the style of Grand Theft Auto 3 at the time, because Grand Theft Auto 3, one of the most influential game, probably the most influential game to come out of the PlayStation 2 era. So there were a lot of games like Mafia, True Crime, Streets of LA and Streets of New York, and The Simpsons Hit and Run, and all this stuff that were trying to ape the style of, Grand Theft Auto 3. But Mafia for the PlayStation 2, for whatever reason, whether it be a technical limitation, design decision, whatever, that main story mission did not let you freely explore the open world. Instead, you need to start the game, play through the first mission, or at least that's how it worked when I played Mafia Definitive Edition, the remake. And then it opens up something called free play. And free play lets you drive around the open world. You can try out the different cars, the different guns. You can look for the collectibles in the environment. But that's it. You can't do any story missions. There's not a lot to do in this open world. Like it's super bland. Like it's like some boneless, skinless, unseasoned chicken, man. It's just lean and plain, which is fine. There's nothing wrong, I guess. If you really just wanted to stoke up the 1930s-esque style of the Mafia world, you could totally do that, which is fine. But I completely forgot that that's exactly how that game worked when it originally came out. So yeah. So if I go back and play more Mafia, I'm just going to play through the story and then never touch it again, because I don't know why I would want to drive around that open world. I guess I could. Maybe I should. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just like, for people that are like, oh, open world games, GnittWitt's just talking about open world games, all this stuff. Like Mafia is very much not that, unless you start up a separate mode where you can freely drive around in the open world. So that might be like the story-based game that I kind of just quickly get through. It's also super short, like 10 hours or something. Like, I don't think Mafia is going to take me very long. Should I continue to pursue it? Anyways, I didn't think it was that bad. Like, people would be like, oh, what do you think? Like, it's incredibly generic in terms of what you come to expect from 1930s Prohibition era gangster East Coast mob mafia style storytelling. There's a guy named Vinny, there's a guy named Tony, there's a guy named Tommy, all this shit. Cigarettes fall off the back of a truck. Like, it has all that stuff to it. Is it bad? No, I don't think it's bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. It's just, there's nothing about it that you have never seen before. You drive cars, it's a third person shooter. You take cover behind things, you shoot guns, you take cover, you can sneak up behind guys and stealth kill them and all that stuff. Like there's nothing that Mafia does that you have ever that you've never seen before, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, like, there's not a lot of games that have that mob style to it. So if you are looking for a linear, short story based 1930s gangster mob shooter, great. There's nothing like it. Go play Mafia Definitive Edition. And if you can't get enough of that, you can go play Mafia 2, because Mafia 2, while it does persist within an open world, throughout the story, there's still not a lot to do in that open world. So you can probably get through it relatively quickly. And then Mafia 3, going for that sort of 70s style open world without the East Coast mob trappings this time around. Anyways, Mafia seems okay. I might go back to it, might pick away at it, but I've just found exploring Fallout 4 again to be more engaging. You know, that Fallout kick still going strong. And then the final thing I'll quickly talk about is I have been persistently, how would I put this? People at work have been telling me that I gotta watch that Tetris TV show, or sorry, not Tetris TV show, excuse me, Tetris movie on Apple TV Plus, the Apple TV Plus being their subscription service. You know, people at work know I love games, know I'm crazy about games, and they know that like I'm even down to watch like, you know, video game adaptations, video game movies and TV shows and all that stuff. You know, a lot of people at work talking about Fallout and The Last of Us and all that stuff. But I never got around to watching that Tetris movie until now. And it's not that old. It came out last year. It was March of last year. So I'm about a year behind, late to the party, but that's okay. And this Tetris movie it's like a biopic. Like it's like a, you know, it's not a documentary or anything. It is a Wikipedia describes it as a biographical thriller film based on the true events around the race to license and patent the video game Tetris from Russia in the late 1980s during the Cold War. The idea being that, of course, Tetris is a game made in Russia, and that, you know, video game licensors and publishers were racing, falling head over heels to try to publish this Tetris game, right? Get the arcade rights to it, get the console rights to it, right? At the time, publishers were splitting the licensing rights between PC and consoles, meaning that different companies could put out Tetris on a PC versus Tetris in the arcade versus Tetris on the Nintendo console, so on and so forth. So it is very much like a, you know, kind of tech thriller in that sense, right? It's a lot of people screwing over each other during the deals and all that stuff. And I'm just going to say this about it. It is based on a true story. But it's one of those biopics where when I was done watching it, I wanted to look up the real history of what happened, because it is very much an, you know, there's not a ton of action to it, but it is definitely like a thriller, spy, noir, not even, kind of. It's got some noir elements to it, but it is very much a spy thriller set against the backdrop of the Cold War, right? So there's two things I want to say. In terms of me learning anything about the true events of what happened, you know, they take a lot of creative liberties with it, right? But in terms of them making a fun spy thriller, I thought it was a great time. I really enjoyed my time watching that Tetris movie on Apple TV Plus. I thought it was a very stylish, incredibly well-paced, like pretty snappy, well-paced, you know, kind of spy thriller. So, you know, I'm going to give it one thumbs up. I'll give it, we don't do that around here. Who do you think I am? Siskel and or Ebert? I would give that Tetris movie a 4 out of 5. I think it's a lot of fun. You can do a lot worse trying to adapt, you know, tech and video game history into a spy thriller. I think them, you know, they got lucky, right? Because to some extent, I mean, history helped them in the sense that like they were literally trying to, you know, get around sanctions and cultural differences and you know, communism versus capitalism and all that stuff when they were trying to license Tetris. So like that stuff like really happened. But the part where there are car chases and all that stuff and fist fights and all that stuff, maybe not so much. But that didn't stop it from being a very stylish, very quick, very slick and fun, you know, kind of spy movie. Like I feel like so often spy, you know, kind of thrillers. I say spy. When I say that it's a spy movie, I'm referring to the style of movie that it is. I'm not saying that there are like It's not some James Bond, like the guy who tries to publish, the guy who's trying to put, fucking Tetris on the Game Boy is not some James Bond, Jason Bourne, type character, but the style of movie that it's going for very much influenced by that kind of spy noir thriller genre, right? And the thing I'll say about it is that there aren't a lot of spy movies that, avoid action and violence the way that this does. Like, I think it gets the heart racing, it gets the blood pumping, it gets you excited about what's going to happen next, who's going to screw over who. Oh my God, this person, took photographs of them doing something, removed it out of context to blackmail them, all this stuff. Like, they do a lot of that stuff, and you don't often see that in a lot of spy movies and stuff these days. So, like, I would say in general, like, Tetris, if nothing else, is a very slick, stylish, and fun, kind of spy thriller. It also just happens to be about these people trying to put Tetris on the Game Boy, and PCs and consoles and all that stuff. So, if you are very curious to look up the history of it, maybe look up the history of what really happened after you watch that movie. But I think if you do get the chance to, it's in terms of, this being a video game podcast and stuff, like, as far as the video game adaptation goes, like, it is a little fluffy, but in terms of just a well-made movie that happens to be about video games, Tetris is a good movie. I really enjoyed my time with it. I'm shocked that it took me so long to get around to watching it, because I am pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And again, like, pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it for how much of that history is, kind of fluffed up in the name of making a fun movie. So, in that regard, I think Tetris is a success, regardless of how true or not it is, and how accurate it is based on those events. So, hey, if you have Apple TV Plus or whatever, give Tetris a shot. Again, if nothing else, they don't make a lot of movies like, they don't make a lot of Cold War spy movies, any spy thrillers anymore. And I think Tetris is a mostly successful movie in that regard. So next week, come on back. We'll talk about Little Kitty, Big City. We'll talk about, we'll talk some more Fallout 4. Just looking at the kind of Game Informer 2024 roadmap of releases this year. Is there anything else that I'm missing that I could check out this week? It is May. Not really. I mean, V Rising, the full version of V Rising is out now. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is out May 16th. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 is out on the 21st. So Multiverses, that's out May 28th. So man, it seems like not this week, but next week. X Defiant, Senua Saga, some big stuff coming out in about the next 2 weeks. So we'll have a lot more new games and stuff like that to talk about. We won't just be sitting around talking about old open world games until the end of time. But hey, maybe I'll pick away. Speaking of old open world games, maybe I'll pick away at some more of Mafia Definitive Edition. That is going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram Threads. You know it, you love it. More TikToks coming soon, okay? We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching, listening, hanging out. Take it easy.